On Unlearning by Richard E. Miller and Anne Jurecic. When students begin their college careers, they arrive with a set of rules from high school they rely on to define good writing. In general, they believe every paragraph should start with a topic sentence that states the paragraph's main point. They are certain all good essays have 5 sections or paragraphs: an introduction that states the essay's thesis, 3 descriptive body paragraphs, each of which discusses a different example that supports the essay's thesis, and a conclusion that restates what has been said in the previous sections. And finally, they think no good essay ever uses the word I. Or rather we, assume you are familiar with these rules, since they've been repeated in writing classrooms for decades. Good grades tend to be assigned to writing that follows these rules. But do these rules really produce good writing? Think about it. When was the last time you ran across a 5-paragraph essay outside of school? Try looking for one in a news source, a magazine, a book, or even a collection of essays. Try to find one online that is not written by a student, LOL. You might find a modified version of one in an op-ed piece, but most of the time, effective writing will be organized quite differently. The 5-paragraph essay, it turns out, is a very limited form, one best suited to the work of making and supporting simple claims. And for overwhelmed teachers, the 5-paragraph essay has the virtue of being easy to skim and thus easy to grade. In college classes, professors often expect students' writing to contend with complexity, which is a challenge well beyond the reach of the 5-paragraph essay. A professor might ask you to develop an argument by working with a handful of original sources, each with a competing point of view, or to support a new interpretation of a text not discussed in class, or to synthesize a semester's worth of lectures into a thoughtful reflection on a multifaceted problem. When professors compose assignments like these, they assume you know how to use your writing to grapple with a genuine problem, puzzle, or question. They assume you've got something else in your writing toolbox besides the formula for the 5-paragraph theme. So why don't we just give you a new set of rules? Could there be rules capacious enough to provide directions for handling the range of writing tasks college students encounter? The response paper in introductory history, the seminar project in advanced economics, the 7 to 8 page argument for a 300-level psychology or politics or anthropology class, the senior year capstone thesis. As appealing as this solution is, it's not one that is available to us or to you, because there's not one set of rules for generating good writing that works within any single discipline, let alone across multiple disciplines. The reason for this is not, as often is supposed, that any judgment of writing quality is inevitably arbitrary, but rather that writing quality is always a function of context. What makes for a good paper in a literature course doesn't automatically make for a good paper in a history course or an econ course. Indeed, it may not even make for a good paper in a literature course taught by a different professor. How then does anyone in any discipline learn how to write about questions that require complex, nuanced responses? The first step involves unlearning the rules that are at the core of the 5-paragraph essay. Taking that first step may seem impossible. We can't unlearn how to walk or talk. These habits are so deeply ingrained that it would take a catastrophe of some kind, either psychological or physical, to unseat them. And we can't unlearn how to ride a bike or how to swim. We may forget over time, but when we return to these activities after a long hiatus, our challenge is not to learn how to do them as if for the first time, but to remember what's involved in keeping the bicycle upright or our body afloat and moving through the water. Writing is unlike these other activities because each act of writing is not a straightforward repetition of what you've written before. Writing something new, requires that you make choices about why you're writing, whom you're writing for, what you think, and what you want your writing to accomplish. So when we say you need to unlearn what you learned about writing in school, we mean we want you to actively resist the idea that writing is governed by a set of universal rules which, if followed, will clearly communicate the writer's ideas to the reader. We can't tell you to forget what you've learned. That would have the same paradoxical effect as telling you not to think about an elephant. And we can't say you shouldn't have been taught the rules governing the 5-paragraph essay because within an educational system dominated by standardized testing, you had to be able to demonstrate that you could produce writing that followed those rules. What we are asking you to do is to question the 2 foundational assumptions that motivate teachers to assign 5-paragraph essays. Namely, that writing's central function is to generate arguments, and that the very best writing does this in ways that are simple, straightforward, and immediately understandable by all. What do we propose you do in place of generating 5-paragraph pseudo-arguments? That you practice the habits of mind of experienced writers. Experienced writers tend to be curious and attentive. They choose to engage deeply with sources, ideas, people, and the world they live in. They are mentally flexible, self-reflective, and open to new ways of thinking, attributes that allow them to adapt to unfamiliar circumstances and problems. And they are persistent, resisting distraction and disappointment, accepting that writing down thoughts which haven't been written before is hard work. When you commit yourself to acquiring these habits through practice, being curious, paying attention, asking questions, exploring, making connections, reflecting, persisting, rethinking, wondering, and playing with other possibilities, you will also be committing yourself to the habit of being creative, which entails inventing novel and useful connections, compelling ideas, and thoughtful prose. As you delve into Habits of the Creative Mind, you'll see that we've designed the book to give you practice developing these habits. Working your way through the book won't lead to mastery of a formula for good writing. Instead, you'll develop the habits of mind that increase your sensitivity to context, nuanced meanings, ambiguities, paradoxes, and contradictions. Habits that allow you to use your writing to confront and explore the unknown. And you'll know you're making progress when you begin to use your writing to show yourself and others how your mind, not any mind, not every mind, but your particular mind works on a problem. Practice Session 1, an institutional autobiography. So this is on page 12 for reference, everybody. This is what we're referring to in the discussion for our practice session here. On Unlearning makes a series of generalizations about the current state of secondary education, and more specifically, about what students are taught to think writing is for. But we know our description isn't true for every student in every classroom. So for this practice session, we want you to reconstruct your personal history as a reader and as a writer in school? What were your formative experiences? Was there a teacher who helped you to significantly improve your writing? Were there events that discouraged you from thinking of yourself as a writer or as a creative person? After you've spent time reflecting, remembering, and taking notes, we want you to write up your own institutional autobiography, in which you document and discuss your experiences with reading and writing in school. Your autobiography should present an account of both moments of learning and moments of unlearning or frustration. Ideally, you will be able to refer directly to papers you've written in the past. Maybe they're stored on your hard drive or in your email archive. If not, it's fine to work from memory. It's surprising how lasting the effects of writing a particularly well-received paper or a harshly criticized one can be. Your autobiography will provide a snapshot of how you evaluate yourself as a reader and a writer at the beginning of your time working with Habits of the Creative Mind. As you move through the book's essays and practice sessions, you can return to your autobiography to see if your sense of how your reading and writing practices have changed as a result of your efforts to use writing as a technology for thinking new thoughts.